People seriously thought that Marcus Rashford should go to the Euros, and whilst I'm not here to tear him down, what he's done in a few months is of course incredible. I took my exam season grumpiness out on exaggerated Marcus Rashford skepticism. Lots of you asked me to make a video about it, so here it is. Ultimately, I think that Marcus Rashford is a very talented young forward, but his finishing last season was pretty fluky, and I think that the praise for him has been excessive because of that. There are essentially two broad skills involved in scoring goals. The first is creating good shooting opportunities, either via great off the ball movement or dribbling past players or whatever, and the second is finishing those good scoring opportunities. Rashford isn't creating those great chances for himself at the moment, but he is scoring them. Before the Euros, Rashford was converting about 30% of his shots into goals in all competitions, which for reference is about double Messi and Neymar's conversion and almost triple Cristiano Ronaldo's conversion. That sounds great when you first hear it, but the reality is that the proportion of shots that you convert into goals today tells us almost nothing about the proportion of shots that you'll convert into goals tomorrow. So scoring lots from a few shots over less than a season probably tells us more about fortune than it does about skill. So unless his output, his ability to create great scoring chances for himself improves next season, which by the way is perfectly possible, Rashford will almost certainly not score the same number of goals in the time that he's on the pitch next season as he did in the season just gone by. Common theme in football is referring to top strikers as top finishers, but often the real skill of goal scoring is not about finishing, it's about creating great opportunities for yourself. In reality, there are very few players who actually finish chances of the same quality better than the average top professional footballer does, or in numbers terms, there aren't that many players who score a lot more than their expected goals over a fairly large number of games. Messi and Higuain are the big ones there, but once you account for how easy or difficult a chance is to score using expected goals, it looks like most top strikers finish at around the same rate. Expected goals measures the quality of chances, using some stuff that I'll explain another time. For teams, it predicts future results better than goals, or shots on target, etc. And for players, it identifies stars like Payet and Harry Kane long before they become household names. Players like Neymar, Vardy, Lewandowski, Van Persie, Rooney, Harry Kane, Lukaku are not so great because they finish better than everyone else. They are so great because they run into and create better scoring opportunities for themselves than everyone else. Rashford, right now, is not getting into those chances better than his peers like Manchester City's Iheanacho, or in numbers terms, his expected goals is worse than his professional peers. And using history, we know it's extremely unlikely that he's just an incredible finisher, because firstly, that's true for very, very few players, and for the players that is true for, they score 1 to 1.2 times their expected goals, whereas Rashford is currently scoring twice his expected goals. That will not last. So how do we explain all of the Rashford hype? Well, the problems with football narrative, the stories surrounding players and teams and leagues, etc., can generally be split up into two categories: small sample sizes and cognitive bias. Problem with football narrative number one, most of our opinions are formed over a few games, and the results, the scorelines from those games, are not truly representative of the fundamental quality of those football teams. If you replayed those games with the exact same teams, you would almost certainly get a different bunch of results, and so our vision gets clouded. Rashford, for example, has taken, I think, 16 Premier League shots so far, but anything can happen in less than 60 shots. Earlier this year, Messi and Neymar created not a single goal nor assist in 54 shots over a month, despite the fact that they'd normally score somewhere between 6 and 12 goals from those shots. If you watch the F2's awesome Neymar video, you can see that Neymar hits the crossbar 4 out of 5 times. But sometimes, if you asked him to do it again, he'd hit it 5 times, or 3 times, 2 times, 1 time, or even 0 times. Perhaps it would be 4 most of the time, but the point is that even once we know how good a player is, there's an element of randomness, of luck, if you want to call it that, in their finishing. Sometimes a player like Werner bursts onto the scene and has a bunch of misses from good positions, and sometimes a player like Marcus Rashford comes along and scores from his first shot in the Europa League, the Premier League, and for England. What most of you are probably thinking right now is that Rashford offers a lot more than just goals, and by only focusing on his finishing, I'm blinding myself from the bigger picture. I have two responses to that. Firstly, you're completely right. He is a genuinely talented 18-year-old playing good football against Premier League adults, and it's entirely unfair of me to compare him to 26-year-old footballers not playing under Louis van Gaal, who we know restricts how well attackers attack. I am only doubting how good he is at finishing right now, not doubting his potential. Secondly, if you'll allow me to be super critical again, there is a problem with his probably fluky finishing streak that goes beyond goals, to do with cognitive bias. The second thing, which steers football narrative away from cold, hard analysis. Fans rightly want to praise young players for scoring goals, but they're led to iffy conclusions about the rest of their all-round game because they bias information that comes before the goal after they know that certain chances end in a goal, even though that original information has not changed. In this clip, Rashford plays it into Sterling well. He then stops his run and doesn't look around, even though Sterling is clearly going to cross it into the box and he has another short option to pass it to. But this move ends in a goal, and because of that, we forget about the imperfections that came before it, even if those nuances are what counts for assessing how good a player is right now. And when Rashford frequently gives the ball away, none of these are particularly bad plays, but we forgive him for it because in the back of our mind, we know that he's been scoring those goals. Even though this information is separate from the goal information, we bias our all-round judgment because we think that goals are very good outcomes and football is a very low-scoring sport. Would we be so positive about this performance if a possibly wrongly halted run didn't land perfectly for Rashford to score his first shot on target for England? Would we be praising his desire, his determination, his footballing intelligence, etc. if the keeper wasn't beaten at his near post? I've given slightly crap examples, but you get the picture. As football watchers, we take in a limited amount of information and we bias that information according to the outcomes or opinions that we think are desirable. So I don't want to make grand Rashford predictions in either direction right now, and I think that anyone who's making set-in-stone predictions for him is wrong. But I do think that the only reason he went to France was because of a pretty fluky finishing streak. If you enjoyed this video, hit like because it helps me out, and subscribe if you want to see more. By the time this goes out, I'll probably be heading to Manchester City for the weekend. If you want to see and hear more about that, follow me on Twitter at MessiSeconds and on Instagram at JoelSals, and I'll catch you for the next video.